My wife's sister lied that I got her pregnant and my wife and her family believed her instantly. My wife slapped me hard and her brothers beat me up and destroy my life. I booked a one-way ticket and vanished. Few years later she finally tracked me down and banged on my door in desperation. That sound. For 6 years, 4 months and 11 days the loudest noise in my life was the kettle whistling. The most violent event was a thunderstorm. I worked, I ate, I slept, and I checked my locks 3 times before bed. I built a life of absolute, deafening silence, all to escape a noise I thought I'd left behind. But the past doesn't just knock. It bangs. It pounds. It screams just like she's screaming my name on the other side of that door right now. A name I haven't used, haven't heard, since the day I vanished. She found me. After everything she did, after she believed the lie that destroyed me, after she watched her brothers break my bones and her own words break my soul, she's here. And the worst part? The most terrifying part? A small, stupid piece of me still remembers the woman I loved. Before she became the woman who ruined me. Her name was Sarah. And to understand the explosion you have to understand what she blew up. We weren't just married, we were one of those disgusting, inseparable couples that people envy and hate at the same time. We finished each other's sentences not because it was cute, but because we genuinely knew. I was a junior architect, she was a pediatric nurse. We had the blueprint. We were saving for a house just outside the city, the one with the big oak tree and the wraparound porch. We argued, sure, but we argued about what color to paint the nursery we wouldn't use for years, or who loved the dog more. It was perfect. It was a perfect, fragile, beautiful snow globe. And then her sister, Chloe, decided to pick it up and shake it. Chloe was Sarah's shadow, her permanent project. The troubled one. The one who could do no wrong because she's just been through so much. While Sarah was building a life, Chloe was burning bridges. Failed jobs, toxic boyfriends, mysterious loans from her parents that everyone knew were gifts. And Sarah, my beautiful, kind-hearted Sarah, was her chief defender. I saw the jealousy, of course. I saw the way Chloe looked at our life, at our stability. It wasn't simple envy, it was corrosive. It was a hunger. She looked at what we had, not as something to admire, but as something that was taken from her. I tried to warn Sarah. I'd say, babe, she's using you, or, don't you see how she manipulates your parents? And Sarah would get that look. That cold, defensive look. She's my sister, Mark, she'd say. You don't get to talk about her like that. Family is family. It was the one crack in our foundation. And it was the crack Chloe used to plant the dynamite. It was a Sunday. Roast beef. Her entire family was there. Her mom, her dad, her 2 oafish brothers, Liam and Kyle, who still lived at home and measured their worth in protein powder and bar fights. And Chloe. She'd been quiet all night, which in hindsight was the first red flag. She was building the drama, setting her stage. I was explaining a new project downtown, excited, passionate. I remember Sarah smiling at me from across the table. That's the last time she ever smiled at me. Chloe suddenly pushed her plate away, a loud, scraping sound that made everyone stop. She stood up, her face pale, and put a shaking hand on her stomach. Her mother said, "Chloe, honey, what's wrong? Is it the roast?" And that's when Chloe burst into tears, not sad tears but a performance. They were loud, gulping, theatrical sobs. "I can't do this," she wailed. "I can't keep this secret anymore." The room went silent. Sarah was instantly at her side, arms around her. "What is it, Chloe? What secret?" Her father stood up, looking concerned. Her brothers just looked annoyed until Chloe finally dropped the bomb. She looked across the table, her eyes locking directly with mine, full of a venom and a terrifying, triumphant malice that I will never forget. "I'm pregnant," she choked out. The room gasped. Her mother's hand flew to her chest. But Chloe wasn't done. She raised a shaking, accusatory finger and pointed it right at me. And it's his. He did this to me." There are moments in your life that play out in slow motion, and this was one of them. The sound drained from the room. I remember the condensation on my water glass. I remember the flicker of the dining room candle. I was frozen, a laugh bubbling in my throat because it had to be, the most insane, ridiculous joke I had ever heard. I looked at Sarah, waiting for her to roll her eyes to say, "Chloe, stop it, you're not funny." I opened my mouth to laugh, to deny it, to say, "What the hell are you talking about?" But I never got the chance. Because Sarah, my Sarah, the woman who had known me for 8 years, the woman who supposedly loved me more than anyone, didn't look at me. She didn't ask a question. She didn't wait for a defense. Her eyes, the same eyes that had looked at me with so much love an hour before, turned to stone. She absorbed her sister's lie like it was gospel, like it was the truth she had been waiting to hear. She turned to me, her face a mask of disgust I didn't recognize, and she slapped me. That it wasn't just a slap. It was a verdict. It was the sound of my life ending. It echoed in the tiny, stunned silence, and it was the starting gun for the rest of them. Before I could even register the sting on my face, Liam and Kyle were on me. These weren't men seeking truth. They were animals who had just been given permission. Kyle grabbed me by the hair and yanked me backward, my chair crashing to the floor. Liam, the bigger one, just started swinging. It wasn't a fight, it was an execution. I felt a fist connect with my ribs and I heard a sharp crack. I tasted blood as my lips split. I was yelling, "She's lying. Sarah, she's lying." But Sarah just stood there, next to her sister, holding Chloe as she sobbed into her shoulder, watching. Her mother was screaming, her father was yelling, not in the house, but the boys didn't care. They dragged me through the dining room, knocking over furniture, and threw me out the front door. I landed hard on the concrete steps, my head bouncing off the brick. The last thing I saw before I blacked out was Sarah, silhouetted in the doorway watching me bleed, her face completely, terrifyingly blank. When I woke up, the door was closed. The lights were off. They hadn't even called an ambulance. They had simply erased me. That was Act 1 of my destruction. The lie was told, the verdict was rendered, and the sentence was carried out. And as I lay there in the dark, with a broken rib and a shattered life, I knew I couldn't win. I couldn't fight a story that good. The only thing I could do was run. When you're beaten by people you know, the physical pain is almost an afterthought. It's the why that paralyzes you. I don't know how long I lay on that porch. An hour? 2. The dew had started to settle on the grass, and my blood had turned into a sticky, dark patch on the concrete. The first thing I registered was the cold. It was a deep, invasive cold that seeped into my bones, a perfect match for the coldness that had been in my wife's eyes. I tried to push myself up, and a white-hot bolt of lightning shot from my side. I screamed, a wet, gurgling sound, and I knew. That was the sound of my rib cracking. I looked up at the house, my house where I paid the mortgage, where I had painted the shutters, where my wife was currently sleeping or more likely being comforted. The lights were all off. They had beaten me, broken me, and left me for dead on my own doorstep, and then they had all gone to bed. The sheer, banal evil of it, that was what finally gave me the strength to move. I couldn't call 911. What would I say? My wife's brothers just beat me up because her sister told a lie? They would send the police there to the house, where Sarah and Chloe would be waiting with their story. A story that had already been believed without a single question. I was the villain, the narrative was set. So I did the only thing I could. I crawled, hand over hand, my ribs screaming with every movement, to my car. I got in, the smell of old coffee and our last road trip hitting me like a betrayal, and I drove myself to the hospital. The 20-minute drive was a symphony of agony. I remember leaning over the steering wheel, trying to keep the pressure off my side, my vision blurring. I parked in the emergency bay, stumbled in, and collapsed at the check-in desk. The nurse looked at me with that practiced, weary expression and asked the question, "What happened?" And I, like a fool, told the truth. I said, "My wife's family attacked me." She nodded, typed something into her computer, and said, "The police will need to take a statement." The police? I thought, finally, someone rational. Someone outside the cult of that family. 2 officers, a man and a woman, came into my little curtained-off bay. They had that look. The one that's 90% boredom and 10% suspicion. I explained everything. I told them about Sarah, about Chloe's history of drama, about the dinner, the impossible lie, the slap, the ambush. I was passionate, I was desperate, I was believable, or so I thought. The male officer just scribbled in his notepad. When I finished, my voice raw, he flipped his notebook closed. "So you're saying you were assaulted?" "Yes," I said, "by Liam and Kyle, her brothers. And my wife just watched." The officer nodded, then shared a look with his partner. "Well, sir, that's not quite the story we're getting." My blood ran colder than the concrete I'd been lying on. What do you mean?" The female officer spoke this time, her voice clipped. "We received a call from a Miss Sarah, her last name, about an hour ago. A domestic disturbance. She and her sister, Chloe, report that you arrived at the family dinner intoxicated and belligerent. That you became enraged, started screaming, and when your sister-in-law, who is pregnant, tried to calm you, you pushed her to the ground. They say her brothers merely restrained until you calmed down and left the property to..." I just stared at them. I think I laughed. It was the laugh of a man who has just seen the final gear of the trap click into place. They had their story. It was perfect. The drunk, abusive husband. The pregnant, vulnerable victim. The heroic brothers. My injuries? I probably got them resisting their restraint. It was my word against 5 of them. 5 people who had been lying for Chloe her entire life. I was the outlier, the variable, the problem they were all united in solving. I looked at the cops and said, "My ribs are broken. I have a concussion. Look at me. Does this look like restraint?" The male cop shrugged. "People get hurt when they resist, sir. Honestly? This sounds like a family matter. My advice? Go home, sleep it off, and get a lawyer in the morning." He handed me a card for a victim services unit, a final, perfect insult. They left the room. They weren't there to find the truth. They were there to file a report. And my report had just been canceled out by hers. The hospital let me go at 4 a.m. with a prescription for painkillers I couldn't afford and a pamphlet on managing your anger. I didn't go back to the house. I couldn't. It wasn't my house anymore. I went to the cheapest, sleaziest motel I could find, the kind that rents by the hour, and paid in cash. I collapsed on the stained comforter, and for the first time I cried. It was a raw, ugly, painful cry for my broken ribs and my broken life. I spent the next 24 hours in a fog of pain and shock. And then the next phase of the attack began. The smear campaign. I tried to call my best friend, Mike. My best man. I needed an anchor. He picked up on the 4th ring. "Mark?" His voice was wrong. "Cool. Mike," I choked out. "God, Mike, you won't believe what happened." And I told him. I told him everything, the same story I told the police. There was a long silence on the other end. "Mark, man," he said, and my heart sank. I already talked to Sarah. Of course he had. She called me last night, dude. She was hysterical. She told me what you did to Chloe. That you got her pregnant and then attacked her when she confronted you? Mark, what the hell? I can't be a part of this. My wife knows her. We can't. Just lose my number, man. Don't call me again." He hung up. He didn't even listen. The betrayal was so absolute, so complete, it was almost artistic. The next morning, Monday, I was supposed to be at the firm presenting the downtown project. The one I was so excited about just 48 hours earlier. I called my boss, my voice hoarse from pain and screaming. "Mr. Harrison," I said, I was in an accident, I can't come in." He cut me off. "Mark, don't bother. Just don't bother." I was confused. "Sir?" "I got a call this morning, Mark. From your father-in-law. A very enlightening call. About your incident. About your behavior. About your problem. He told me you assaulted your sister-in-law. He told me there's a police investigation. We're a family firm, Mark. We don't tolerate that. We can't have that liability. Your things will be in a box at reception. We'll mail you your final check." The phone clicked. Just like that. 8 years of my career gone. Not with a bang, but with a phone call from a man I used to call Dad. They weren't just destroying my present. They were salting the earth of my past and my future. I was running out of cash for the motel. I had maybe $50 left. I drove to our bank. Our joint account. The one with our house savings, the one I deposited my paycheck into. I put my card in. I entered the PIN. I asked for a withdrawal. Insufficient funds. I tried again. Insufficient funds. I went inside, my ribs screaming, and walked up to the teller. I gave her my ID. She typed for a moment, then gave me a look of pure plastic pity. "I'm sorry, sir, but this account has a 0 balance. It looks like a full wire transfer was initiated by the other signator, Miss Sarah, at 9:04 a.m. yesterday. All funds were moved to a new account." 9:04 a.m. on Sunday. While I was at the hospital. While I was telling the police my side of the story, she was at her computer, systematically draining me of every penny we had. It wasn't an act of passion. It wasn't a mistake. It was a strategy. It was a coordinated, premeditated, financial execution. She had the lie, her brothers had the violence, her father had the connections, and she had the bank account. That was the end. In 48 hours, I had lost my wife, my family, my home, my best friend, my career, and all my money. I was a pariah. I was a monster. I had been beaten, robbed, and slandered by the very people I had built my life around. I went back to the motel, sat on that filthy bed, and I looked at the $50 in my hand. The victim services card the cop gave me was on the nightstand. I picked it up and I started to laugh. I was the one with broken ribs and I was the abuser. I was the one who was penniless and I was the problem. The game was rigged. The truth didn't matter. Her lie was more powerful than my truth. And I knew in that moment I could not fight this. I could not win. I could not sue. I could not beg. I couldn't even prove my own innocence. The only thing I had left, the only choice they hadn't taken from me, was the choice to disappear. When you have nothing, your choices become incredibly simple. It's a terrifying, almost religious kind of clarity. I had $50, a full tank of gas in a car they could probably track, a broken rib, a face that was a mosaic of purple and yellow, and a name that was now officially poison. I couldn't be Mark anymore. Mark was a wife-beater. Mark was a drunk. Mark was a monster who preyed on his pregnant sister-in-law. The narrative was written, the ink was dry, and the book was closed. But the man sitting in that motel room, he was still alive. And he had one final move to make. It wasn't about fighting back. It was about surviving. The only way to win a game that is completely rigged against you is to flip the board and walk away. To not just leave the game but to leave the entire casino. I used the motel's slow, sketchy Wi-Fi and the last of my $50. $43 for a one-way bus ticket. Not a plane. A plane leaves a paper trail, a name on a manifest, a clear destination. A bus is anonymous. It's the circulatory system for people who don't want to be found. I didn't buy a ticket from my city. I drove 2 hours south, my ribs screaming at every pothole, to a different station in a different town. I parked the car, my car, the last thing I truly owned, in a long-term parking lot. I knew it would be found eventually. Towed, impounded, maybe even reported by Sarah as stolen, to add another crime to my list. I didn't care. Let them have the medal. I was saving the man. I walked into the bus station, my hood pulled up, my face turned down, and I waited. I didn't buy a ticket to a destination. I bought a ticket for a direction. How far west does this get me? I asked the bored-looking clerk. He grunted, changes in Denver, then goes all the way to Portland. One way, I said. Portland. The next 3 days were a blur of cheap coffee, stale air, and a constant vibrating ache in my side. I was a ghost among ghosts. The bus was filled with people who were either running from something or had nothing to run to. No one made eye contact. No one asked questions. It was the perfect purgatory. Every stop I get off, my heart pounding in my chest, expecting to see a cop or worse, one of her brothers. I was paranoid, but my paranoia felt earned. It felt like a survival instinct. I saw my face, my bruised, haunted face, reflected in the dirty window, and I realized I didn't even recognize myself. This was good. This was armor. When the bus finally hissed to a stop in Portland, I didn't get off and look for a new life. I walked straight from that bus station to another, smaller, local one. I looked at the board. I saw a town name I had never heard of. A small logging town in the mountains, 3 hours east. I bought another ticket. Because I wasn't just running from them. I was running to a place they would never, ever think to look. The town was called Oak Haven. It was a lie. There were no oaks, only pines, and it was no haven. It was a rough, forgotten-in-time place that smelled of wet lumber and diesel. And it was perfect. I walked into the first diner I saw, ordered a black coffee, and looked at the help wanted board. A lumber mill needed a swamper, the guy who does all the grunt work. No experience needed, paid cash daily. I walked to the mill. The foreman, a man whose face looked like a block of granite, looked at my bruised face, my office-soft hands, and my broken-in-half posture. "You in trouble?" he asked, not unkindly. I paused. The lie was easy, ex-wife, bad scene. But I was done with lies, even the ones that helped me. I just said, "I'm trying not to be." That was good enough. He hired me. My new life began at 5 a.m. the next day for $8 an hour, in the freezing, dangerous, glorious noise of the mill. The first year was about pure survival. I rented a room above a bar. I had no phone, no internet, no bank account. I was a cash and carry man. I worked, I bought food, I slept. My rib healed badly, a constant, dull reminder. But the physical pain, it was a gift. It replaced the emotional pain. You can't grieve a stolen life when you're just trying to make sure you don't get crushed by a falling log. I was known as Mark, but no one asked my last name. In a town like Oak Haven, asking for a last name is like asking to see a man's arrest record. It's just not done. I let my beard grow. My hair grew long. The bruises faded and were replaced by the permanent squint of a man who works outside. I lost the softness of the architect and gained the hard, stringy muscle of a laborer. I became someone else. No, that's not right. I forged someone else. I burned the old me away in the furnace of hard work and anonymity. 6 years went by. 6 years. 4 months. And 11 days. I wasn't at the mill anymore. I'd saved my cash, bought a small truck, and started my own handyman business. Oak Haven repairs. I fixed fences, I patched roofs, I unblocked drains. People trusted me. I was the quiet guy who did good work and never talked much. I had an apartment now, a real one with a real lease under my new legally changed name. Adam. I had a bank account. I even had a cat. I had built a wall of silence and routine around me. It wasn't a life not like the one I'd had. There was no shared laughter, no dreams for a nursery, no one to hold. But it was mine. It was a fragile, quiet piece that I had clawed from the wreckage. I had vanished so completely that most days I wasn't even sure Mark had ever existed. He felt like a story I'd read, a sad, pathetic character in a tragedy. I was Adam now, and Adam was safe. Adam was invisible. Adam had finally stopped looking over his shoulder. That was my mistake. That was my fatal, stupid, arrogant mistake. I believed the past was dead. I believed it was buried. But it wasn't. It was just waiting. It had been hunting me. For 6 years, it had been sniffing me out. And now, it was here, the first second I was a ghost. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I thought if I am perfectly still, she is not real. If I don't make a sound, the phantasm will fade. But she was real. She was 6 inches of cheap wood away from me. The second I was a coward. My instinct wasn't to fight, it was to run. My eyes darted to the back window, the fire escape. I could be gone in 30 seconds. Vanish again. Find another Oak Haven. Start over. Become John or Paul or Peter. But the third second, the cowardice was burned away by something I hadn't felt in 6 years, for months and 11 days. Rage. A pure, cold, Arctic rage. How dare she? How dare she come here? How dare she find my sanctuary and scream the name of the man she had murdered? How dare she stand on my porch and bang? She was sobbing out there. Mark, please, I need to talk to you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Her voice. It was the same, but it was broken. The old Sarah, the one I loved, had a laugh like wind chimes. The Sarah who had betrayed me had a voice of ice. This voice was just shattered glass. I didn't care. I'd heard her perform before. I unlocked the deadbolt. The sound, a loud thunk, was so final the banging stopped. The screaming stopped. There was a sudden, terrified silence on the other side. She knew I was there. She knew I had just acknowledged her. I turned the knob, my calloused, scarred hand, the hand that had been rebuilt by physical labor, resting on the cold metal. I pulled the door open. It wasn't her. Not really. The Sarah I had loved was bright, vibrant, full of life. The Sarah who had condemned me was cold and righteous. This woman on my porch was a husk. She was thin, unnervingly so. Her hair, which had been a rich auburn, was now lank and streaked with gray. She had dark, hollow circles under her eyes, the eyes of a person who doesn't sleep or sleeps badly. She was wearing expensive clothes, a designer coat, but it was rumpled like she'd slept in it. She looked like I had felt 6 years ago. Wrecked, ruined. When she saw me, she made a sound, a gasp, a sob, a dying breath. She hadn't seen a ghost. She had seen a stranger. She was expecting Mark, the junior architect. She had found Adam, the handyman with a beard, a scar over his eye from a piece of flying shrapnel at the mill, and eyes that were as cold and empty as a locked-up house. Mark, she whispered. Her hand, shaking, came up as if to touch my face. I didn't flinch. I just stared. My silence was a wall. Her hand fell. Oh God, she wept. It's you. It's really you. She took a step forward as if to hug me. I took one step back, my hand still on the doorknob. The rejection was as physical as the slap she had given me. It hit her. She recoiled, and the dam of her composure, whatever she had left, just broke. She started to sob, not the theatrical tears of her sister, but the ugly, shoulder-shaking, snot-and-tears sobs of true, profound despair. I've been looking for you for 5 years, she choked out, wiping her face. I hired 3 different private investigators. The first 2 found nothing. You were a ghost. The third one, he found a name change, illegal. Adam? He traced you here. I've been sitting in my car across the street for 2 days, just watching you go get coffee, watching you fix that fence. I didn't know how to, why. That's all I said. One word. It wasn't, why are you here? It wasn't, how did you find me? It was, why? Why anything? Why the lie? Why the betrayal? Why now? The question seemed to break her. Because it was a lie, she screamed, her voice cracking. It was all It was all a lie. I just stared at her. I know, I said, my voice dead. I told you it was. Her face crumpled. No, she said, no, you don't understand. I mean, I know it was a lie. I've known, for years. And then it all came out, a torrent of confession, a putrid flood of truth that she had been holding back for half a decade. She told me. Standing right there on my porch in the cold, she laid it all out. Chloe was never pregnant. Of course she wasn't. It was all a show. She had just been dumped by her latest married sugar daddy who had cut her off. She was broke. She was furious. And she saw us. She saw me with her perfect, stable, successful sister, living the life Chloe thought she deserved. So she concocted the most evil, most damaging lie she could think of. A lie that would not only make her the center of a dramatic universe, but would also simultaneously destroy her rival, me. She knew her family. She knew her brothers were violent. She knew her father was a bully. And she knew that her sister Sarah would believe her. It was the perfect sociopathic plan. And it worked better than she could have ever dreamed. What about the baby? I asked, my voice flat. There was never any baby, she whispered, her eyes squeezed shut. About 2 months after you left, the baby bump wasn't bumping. My mom started asking to go to doctor's appointments. Chloe kept making excuses. Then, she miscarried. She put the word miscarried in air quotes, her hands shaking. It was a bad performance even for her. My father, he got suspicious. He wasn't on your side, he hates being lied to. He found her. He found out she'd been seeing that other married man. He beat her. He beat the truth out of her. She said this like it was a tragedy. I felt nothing. And she confessed, Sarah continued. She told them everything. That it was all fake. That you had never ever touched her. That she just hated you for taking me away. I waited. And? I asked. And that's when I knew. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. Mark. Adam. I tried to find you. I went to the police to report you missing. She actually smiled for a second, a horrible broken grimace. They told me you were a grown man. That you had left. They showed me the report you filed. The assault. And the one we filed. They laughed at me. That's when I almost felt something. Pity. But it died. You didn't come for me, I said. It wasn't a question. You didn't look for me. Not then. She shook her head, the tears flowing again. I was ashamed. My family, my father forbade it. He said, the damage is done. He said, we stick together. They just erased you. They threw out all your things. My brothers, my father, my mother, they just acted like you had never existed. And I went along with it. For a year. I was a coward. And then what? I asked. You got tired of being a coward? She flinched. My father died, she said. Heart attack. 2 years ago. After the funeral, seeing my brothers and my sister. Her face contorted in disgust. Chloe. She was smirking at the funeral. She inherited everything. She has the house. She's just the same. And I broke. I saw what I had become. I saw what I had believed, what I had done, what I had thrown away. I took my inheritance and I've spent every penny of it looking for you. She looked up at me, her eyes so desperate, so empty. I live in a tiny apartment. I lost my job. I'm nothing, Mark. I'm what you were. I had to find you. I had to say. She took a deep, shuddering breath. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I looked at her. The woman who had been my wife. The woman I had built a shrine to in my heart. The woman I would have died for. And I felt nothing. The rage was gone. The pain was a distant echo. The love had been beaten out of me on that porch 6 years ago. It had been drained from me with that bank transfer. It had been frozen to death on that bus. She wasn't my wife. She was a stranger. A sad, pathetic, broken stranger who had made a terrible, life-shattering choice and had come here for what? Forgiveness? Absolution? For me to fix her? For me to tell her it was okay? I had spent 6 years reforging my entire soul in iron and silence. I had built a new man from the atoms of the one she had destroyed. And she stood here on his doorstep asking to see the ghost. I'm not Mark, I said. My voice was quiet. Mark died on your porch. She flinched as if I had slapped her. I know. But I can fix this. I have money left. I can give it to you. I will tell everyone. I'll go to the police. I'll testify against Chloe, against my brothers. She was babbling, grabbing at my arm. I looked down at her hand on my sleeve. I didn't move. I just looked at it until she saw what she was doing and pulled her hand back like she'd been burned. You can't fix this, Sarah, I said. You're not here to fix me. You're here to fix you. You're here so you can sleep at night. I looked past her at the rainy gray street of the town that had become my world. I sleep fine. She stared at me. She finally understood. There was no us left to save. There was no Mark to rescue. The man she was looking for was gone. What now? She whispered, her voice that of a lost child. What do I do? I looked at her one last time. I saw the ruin of our life, the wreckage of her choices, the ghost of my past, and I knew, the only thing left to do, the only move I had. 5. There is no victory in a moment like that. There is no applause. There is no satisfaction. When you spend 6 years, 4 months, and 11 days fueled by the cold, black memory of a betrayal, you expect the final confrontation to be an explosion, a firework, a release. You expect to feel something powerful, vindication or fury or even, God help you, a final, sad flicker of love. But when I turned that lock, the only thing that filled the room was the silence. It was the same silence I had cultivated for years, but this time it felt different. It was heavier. It was absolute. She was gone, and she had taken the last rotting piece of Mark with her. I stood there for a long time. I wasn't listening for her footsteps or for a car door to slam. I was listening to myself, listening to the man who was left, the man who had survived, the man who had just finally chosen to live his new life, rather than be haunted by his old one. I watched her. She was still on the porch, but she wasn't crying anymore. She was just standing there, a statue in the rain. She looked up at my door, not with desperation, but with the dazed, empty look of someone who has just walked away from a car crash. She had spent 5 years hunting for a ghost, and when she finally found him, he had told her he was dead. She had come to me for absolution, for a way to fix her own broken soul, and I had handed her back the pieces. I watched her wipe her face, not with a tissue, but with the sleeve of her expensive, rumpled coat. She looked small. She looked like her sister. Like a performer whose audience had just walked out. She stayed like that for maybe 5 minutes, a lifetime. Then she seemed to shrink. She turned, walked down my rickety wooden steps, and got into a car I hadn't even noticed. A black, late-model luxury sedan, caked in mud, a car that screamed old money and long, hard trip. She didn't look back. She just drove away, disappearing down the one road that leads out of Oak Haven, and just like that, it was over. The great, epic, life-destroying tragedy of Mark ended on a rainy Tuesday with a whimper. There was no justice. There would be no trial. Chloe would keep the money. Her brothers would never face a consequence. Sarah would go back to her tiny apartment, a ghost in her own life, haunted by what she had done. And I would stay here in Oak Haven, the town that had no oaks. I stood there, waiting for the water to boil, and I felt the last of the ice in my veins begin to crack. But it wasn't sadness. It wasn't anger. It was a thought. I had seen the monster that had ruined my life, and she was just a sad, broken woman. I had faced the past, and I had not flinched. I had not forgiven. I had not forgotten. I had simply accepted. I had accepted that the man she destroyed was truly gone, and the man who had replaced him, Adam, was stronger. The scars are still there. My rib aches when it's cold, just like it's aching right now. When I hear someone banging on a door, my heart still stops for a second. That will never go away. You can't be buried alive and not come out with dirt under your fingernails. But the difference is, they're just scars now. They're not open wounds. They are the price I paid for my new life. Sarah didn't come here and find Mark. She came here and gave Adam his freedom. She gave me the one thing I couldn't give myself, an ending to his story. My story begins now. It begins with this cup of coffee. It begins with the job I have tomorrow, fixing a roof on Main Street. It begins with the silence. Not the silence of a man who is hiding, but the silence of a man who is finally at peace. The past is a different country. I'm glad I'm not a citizen there anymore. 6. When I closed that door on Sarah, I didn't just end our story. I ended her story too. I was her last hope, not for love but for a purpose. She had spent 5 years hunting me, fueled by a quest for her own redemption. And when I denied her that, when I showed her that her quest was meaningless to me, her purpose evaporated. The woman who had everything, the perfect life, the loving husband, the family she protected, was now just a shell. She had spent her entire inheritance finding me, and she had just enough left to disappear, just like I had. She moved to a city she didn't know, into an apartment she didn't care about, and she just stopped. She became a ghost, just as she had made me one. But my ghostly life had been a period of rebuilding. Hers was just an erosion. She had betrayed her husband for her family, and then abandoned her family for a ghost. She was left with no one. She was a woman belonging to no one and to nowhere. She was just the consequence. But the true justice, the ugly, poetic, non-Hollywood justice, was reserved for Chloe, the snake, the one who had started it all. She had won for a time. She had the house, the money, the power. But a person who is a black hole of need can never have enough. As I learned from her mother's letter, she burned through the money. She found men who were incredibly more toxic than she was. She sold her father's house. She sold her mother's jewelry. She sold everything until there was nothing left to sell. This was one of her last visits. Not to see her mother, but to see her mother's bank account. She was there to beg, to cajole, to steal her mother's last few dollars of pension. The woman who had demanded loyalty from everyone, had given it to no one. That I didn't know all of this at the time. I only learned the final details of Chloe's arrest and Sarah's disappearance through a small, buried online obituary for the mother, who died alone a year later. I read it. I felt nothing. A strange, clinical detachment. It was like reading about characters in a novel, a book I had read so long ago I'd forgotten the plot. Their story, their entire dramatic, violent, selfish story, just ended. It fizzled out in a sad apartment in a cheap nursing home. It didn't end with a bang. It ended with a whimper. They didn't just destroy my life, they had destroyed their own. They were their own punishment. My old life ended with a slap. It ended with a lie. It ended with violence and betrayal. My new life, it begins every morning with the sound of a kettle whistling. It's built on strong timber and an honest handshake. It's quiet. It's simple. And it is finally mine. Act 7. There's a particular kind of trap that looks exactly like paradise. It's woven from threads of shared laughter, sun-drenched mornings, and the comforting weight of another person sleeping beside you. My trap was named Lila. Not because she was malicious, but because she was the intricate, beautiful centerpiece around which my entire perfect world was built. And a centerpiece, however beloved, can still obscure the venomous snakes coiling beneath the table. We were, by all accounts, sickeningly in love. Our friends would roll their eyes, our families would coo, and we just existed in that golden bubble of mutual adoration. I was a software engineer, building elegant solutions for complex problems, a skill that would later prove invaluable in dismantling the even more complex problem that shattered my life. Lila was a kindergarten teacher, her heart as open and gentle as her students. We had the house, the dog, the quiet plans for a future that stretched out, predictable and radiant, like a perfectly coded algorithm. It wasn't just love, it was an unbreakable algorithm of devotion. Or so I believed. Every paradise, of course, has its serpent. Hers was named Jade. And she wasn't just troubled in the way some people are, with a history of bad choices and a need for endless validation. Jade was a master manipulator, cloaked in a perpetual guise of fragile sweetness. She was the younger sister, perpetually just out of reach of Lila's sunny success, always struggling, always needing a helping hand. But where others saw vulnerability, I saw calculation. I saw the way her eyes would track Lila's every movement when I was complimenting her, the subtle tightening of her smile. She was a leech, but an intelligent one, carefully drawing sustenance from Lila's boundless empathy. Lila's parents, bless their naive hearts, adored Jade. She was their sensitive one, the artist, the free spirit who just needed a little more guidance. But to me, her guidance counselor persona was just a cover for her true calling. A quiet, psychological assassin, always looking for a weakness, always looking for a way in. The warning signs were there if you knew how to read the code. Small glitches in the perfect program. Jade borrowing Lila's favorite dress and accidentally tearing it, knowing Lila would never truly be angry. Jade misplacing keys to our apartment just before we left for a weekend trip, causing us to miss our flight. Each incident was trivial on its own, easily dismissed by Lila as, "Oh, that's just Jade, she's a bit scattered." But I saw the pattern. I saw the subtle gleam in Jade's eye each time, the barely perceptible flicker of satisfaction. I tried to talk to Lila gently at first. "Babe," I'd say, "don't you think Jade sometimes leans on you a little too much? It feels like she actively tries to cause problems." Lila would always turn dismissive. "Ethan, please," she'd sigh, "she's my sister. She means well. She's just a little insecure." It was the one blind spot in her perfect vision, the one vulnerability in our fortress. And Jade, the patient predator, knew exactly how to exploit it. She wasn't just jealous of our happiness. She wanted to wear it, to inhabit it, and if she couldn't have it, she would scorch the earth around it until nothing grew. The night the bomb dropped, it was predictably at a family dinner. Her parents' anniversary. Sterling silver, fine china, all the trappings of old money and familial unity. I was trying to make conversation, explaining a new project at work, feeling that familiar, low hum of unease whenever Jade was present. She was too quiet. Her eyes darted from face to face, almost like she was doing a head count, making sure her audience was complete. Lila, ever the peacemaker, kept trying to draw her out. "Jade, honey, are you okay? You've barely touched your food." And Jade just gave her a wan, trembling smile. I'm fine, Lil. Just a lot on my mind." The trap was set. The bait was laid. I felt a prickle on the back of my neck. I knew something was coming. But even with all my foresight, all my cynical observations of Jade's patterns, I could not have predicted the sheer, audacious, sickening depravity of the lie she was about to unleash. Everyone looked at her. Her mother gasped. Her father, a stern but ultimately doting man, leaned forward, concern etched on his face. Lila was instantly at her side, her hand on Jade's arm. "Jade? What is it? What's wrong?" Jade looked at her sister, her eyes welling up with meticulously crafted tears. She choked back a sob and then another. The family waited, wrapped in agonizing suspense. And then her gaze, filled with a triumphant, malevolent sparkle I recognized instantly, locked onto mine. Her voice, trembling with fabricated emotion, pierced the silence of the room like a shard of ice. I can't keep it a secret anymore," she sobbed, loud enough for everyone to hear, but directing her words solely at me. I'm pregnant." A collective gasp, a murmur of shock and surprise. But before anyone could celebrate, before anyone could ask, "Who is the father?" she took a deep, shuddering breath, pointed a shaking finger across the table, and uttered the words that would shatter my entire universe into irreparable fragments. And it's Ethan's. He did this to me." The world stopped. Not just the room. The entire world. My mind raced, trying to find a loophole, a hidden camera, a punchline. This wasn't just a lie, it was an act of war. A tactical nuclear strike on my very existence. My first instinct was laughter, a horrified, disbelieving laugh because it was so utterly, fantastically absurd. I searched Lila's face, waiting for her to debunk it, to laugh, to look at me with the same shared incredulity. But the laughter died in my throat, replaced by a cold, metallic taste of dread. Because Lila wasn't looking at me with shock or even with confusion. She was looking at me with absolute, horrifying belief. Her eyes, those beautiful, trusting eyes, were now cold, hard, and filled with a hatred I had never, ever seen. The perfect paradise had just exploded. And I was standing in the ruins. There are exactly 1.7 seconds between a lie being told and the truth being believed. I counted. In that 1.7 seconds, as I sat paralyzed, my entire world was put on trial, judged, and executed. I was looking for Lila. I needed her, my anchor, my partner, to laugh. To say, "Jade, what are you talking about? That's not funny." But Lila wasn't looking at me. She was still holding her sister, and her face was the most terrifying thing I have ever seen. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't shock. It was recognition. It was the look of someone who had just had their deepest, darkest, most secret suspicion confirmed. It was as if she hadn't just heard the lie, it was as if she had been waiting for it. She didn't scream. She didn't rage. She didn't slap me. She did something so much worse, so much more final. She looked at me, her eyes dead, and she whispered, her voice colder than the ice in my water glass, "How could you?" That was the gavel. The case was closed. My quiet, whispered denial, "Lila, no, this is insane, she's lying," was swallowed by the roar. Her father, a man I had admired, a man I had played golf with, stood up, his face a purple mask of fury. "Get out," he boomed, a vein throbbing in his temple. Ben and Marcus, her brothers, weren't there to hear my side. They were there to enforce the verdict. They flanked me, grabbing me by the arms, and started to haul me from the chair. It wasn't a beating. It was an extraction. Like I was a piece of toxic material that needed to be removed. I was yelling, "She's lying. Lila, look at me. Tell them she's lying." But Lila wouldn't look at me. She was too busy burying her face into her grieving sister's shoulder, coddling the serpent. And Jade, through her performance of sobs, she peeked at me. Just for a second. And she smiled. A tiny, victorious, venomous smile. They dragged me through the foyer, my feet barely touching the ground, and threw me out onto the perfectly manic-led lawn. The heavy oak door slammed shut, the sound of the deadbolt clicking into place echoing in the quiet, suburban night. I was left standing in the sprinklers, my life, my love, and my entire future, locked away on the other side of that door that I don't know how I got there. I just drove. I was on autopilot, my brain a static-filled void. I needed to talk to her. I needed to make her listen. This was a misunderstanding. A horrible, monstrous misunderstanding that we would, what? Laugh about? No. But we would fix it. We had to. I walked up to our front door, the red door we had painted together, and put my key in the lock. It didn't go in all the way. I tried again. It was jammed. I looked closer and my blood turned to ice. The keyhole, it was filled with something. Glue? Broken off toothpicks? No. It was a new lock. My key was obsolete. I stood there staring at it and my phone buzzed in my pocket. A new email. Not from Lila. From a name I didn't recognize. Rothman, Steele and Associates. A law firm. Her father's law firm. The subject line was, "Cease and desist." It wasn't a letter. It was an execution order. Effective immediately, you are to cease all contact with Ms. Lila, her last name, and Ms. Jade, her last name. A temporary restraining order has been filed on behalf of Ms. Jade, citing physical intimidation and emotional distress. A second restraining order is being filed by Ms. Lila's last name, pending your immediate vacating of the shared property. It had been 30 minutes. 30 minutes. They hadn't just thrown me out. They had a plan. This wasn't a family's emotional reaction. This was a premeditated, coordinated, strategic purging. My key not working wasn't Lila having a panic attack. It was Ben and Marcus, her father's fixers, going to our house while I was driving around in a daze and calling a 24-hour locksmith. Every move I made, they were 3 steps ahead. The next day, the second act of the play began. A call from my boss. "Ethan," he said, his voice uncomfortably formal, I got a call this morning. From your father-in-law. A very disturbing call. I knew what was coming. He's a major investor in this company, Ethan. You know that. He told me about this situation. About your moral turpitude." His words. He said if you were still on the payroll by noon, he was pulling his entire portfolio. I hung up. I didn't even say goodbye. In less than 24 hours, I had no wife, no sister-in-law, no family, no home, no access to my money, and no job. I was a pariah. I was a monster. I was sitting in a motel room that smelled like stale cigarettes and despair, with $114 in my checking account. And I had a choice. The exact choice they had planned for me. The choice a guilty man would make. I could run. I could buy a bus ticket, change my name, and disappear. I could let the lie become the truth. I could let Ethan the monster be the only story ever told. I sat there, on the edge of that lumpy bed, and I felt the crushing weight of their victory. It was perfect. A perfect, airtight, systematic destruction. And as I sat there, the shock began to fade and something new, something cold and dark and heavy, began to form in the pit of my stomach. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't grief. It was admiration. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a plan. Jade's plan. It was elegant. It was precise. It was a masterpiece of social engineering. And as I sat there, the software engineer, the man who finds bugs in complex systems for a living, I realized something. You don't run from a beautiful piece of code. You study it. You reverse engineer it. You find the single, tiny, arrogant flaw in its logic. And then, you write a patch. A patch that doesn't just fix the bug, but one that exploits it, turns the entire system inside out, and burns the whole damn thing down from the inside. They wanted me to run. They expected me to run. And that was the first mistake they made. I wasn't going to run. I was going to watch. I was going to wait. I was going to become the ghost they'd already told everyone I was. Jade thinks this game is over? She thinks she's won? She's just given a man with nothing left to lose the only thing he needs. A problem to solve. A man who has lost everything is a cliché. But a man who has lost everything and knows why, that is a different animal. That is an engineer who has just been given a problem statement. My problem statement was Jade. The system I needed to hack was her entire family. And the first rule of hacking a secure system is patience. You don't hit the front door with a sledgehammer. You sit in the dark, you watch the traffic, you learn the protocols, and you wait for a single unlocked port. My first protocol was survival, but not the survival of a victim. I needed the survival of a hunter. I took my last $114 and instead of a bus ticket, I bought a month's worth of high-protein meal replacement powder and a burner phone. I sold my laptop, the one they could trace, for cash. I became a ghost not by running but by sinking. I found a room for rent, cash only, in a part of the city they would never, ever drive through. And I found work. The beauty of the digital age is that you can be a ghost and still earn a living. I became a freelance coder, a fixer, on anonymous gig work platforms, taking on the nightmare projects other engineers wouldn't touch. I worked 18 hours a day, fueled by protein shakes and a cold, clarifying rage, rebuilding my bank account, one untraceable crypto transaction at a time. I was no longer Ethan, the loving husband. I was Epsilon, a faceless entity in the digital ether. And Epsilon had one purpose: to build the weapon that would dismantle my old life. My second protocol, obsessive surveillance. While I was coding for cash, my other monitors were running scripts scraping data. I was building a private, searchable database of them. Every social media post, every like, every tagged photo, every public event. I became the most dedicated, most avid fan of the family that had destroyed me. And Jade? Oh, Jade was a performer. She was thriving in her role as the tragic victim. Her social media was a masterclass in manipulation. There were the brave posts, her hand on her just-forming bump, with captions like, "Even on the hardest days, my little miracle keeps me strong." #singlemom, #survivor. There were the subtle but not subtle digs. Feeling so grateful for my family who saved me from the biggest mistake of my life. #blessed, #safe. Lila, my wife. Lila was her biggest cheerleader. Her comments were always first, "My strong, beautiful sister. We love you and Peanut, so much." Peanut. They'd given my non-existent demon-spawned phantom child a nickname, but the thing about engineers, we love patterns. And the thing about liars, they get lazy. They rely on patterns. I started to see the bugs. In week 12, she posted a photo of her morning sickness, clutching a box of ginger tea, her face pale. A week later, she posted a throwback photo from a college party, wearing the exact same pajamas with the exact same distressed look. She hadn't taken a new picture, she had recycled an old one. She was plagiarizing her own life. Then the big one. The first ultrasound. It was a grainy black and white picture of a fetus, her hand, with her distinctive moon-shaped ring, holding it. Heard my little Peanut's heartbeat today. My world. The post got hundreds of likes, a wave of digital sympathy. I, however, wasn't looking at the picture. I was a software engineer. I was looking at the code. I ran a reverse image search on the ultrasound itself. And I found it. In 1.2 seconds. On a stock photo website. Generic fetus ultrasound, 12 to 14 weeks. She hadn't even stolen it from another person. She had paid for it. It was a $10 stock image. She had put a watermark of her ring on it in Photoshop, a sloppy amateur job, and posted it as her child. My child. The weapon I was building now had its first sharp, irrefutable blade. But you don't use a blade like that right away. You sharpen it. You wait. You find other weaknesses. You see, the family had unified against me. But they were still a family of vipers and Jade was the queen. I needed to remind them of that without them knowing it was me. I created a new persona, a concerned friend, an anonymous emailer. I didn't send it to Lila, who was too deep in the cult. I sent it to her father, the investor, the man who had destroyed my career. Men like him don't like moral turpitude. But more than that, they hate being played for a fool. The email was simple and had nothing to do with me. Dear Mr. Father's last name, it read, I am a friend of your family and I am worried. I know you are supporting Jade through her troubles, but I saw her last week. She was not at home, sick. She was at the high-end bar name, drinking what looked like cocktails with a man who was most definitely not her brother. She is a remarkable actress. Please just watch her. A friend. I sent it and I waited. I wasn't trying to expose her. I was just updating her code. I was planting a new tiny bug in the system. Doubt that I knew it was coming. A fake pregnancy has an expiration date. You can wear a prosthetic bump, you can post stock photos, but you can't fake a third trimester without a lot of work. Jade was lazy. Her posts became more about the pain, the complications, the stress. She was building her exit strategy. And I knew, with the chilling certainty of an engineer predicting a system crash, what it was going to be. The miscarriage. And, of course, she had to make it my fault. It came on a Tuesday. A frantic, middle-of-the-night post from Lila. Please pray for my sister. We're in the ER. Wait. I can't. 2 hours later, the official tragic post from Jade. My heart is broken. The stress, the unending stress of the last few months, it was too much for my little peanut. The monster who did this to me, he has finally taken everything. I have lost my baby. And there it was. Her masterpiece. She had won again. She had gotten all the sympathy of the pregnancy, all the drama of the accusation, and now the permanent, unassailable status of a grieving mother. And she had, in one masterful stroke, painted me as not just a predator but a baby killer. The family's hatred for me, which I had been trying to subtly chip away at, was now a diamond-hard, unbreakable monolith. A normal man would have been broken. But I, the engineer, I just looked at the data. Jade thought she had just sealed her victory. She thought she had just closed the case. But all she had done was get sloppy. She had created a phantom. A lost baby. A ghost. And the thing about a ghost is that it has no body. It has no medical records. It has no proof of existence. She thought she had just erased the evidence. But what she had really done was create a lie that was now auditable. She thought this was the end of the game. But for me, the man with the stock photo of her baby, saved on a hard drive, this was the beginning of phase 2. She wasn't just a liar anymore. She was a fraud. And I had the receipt. For a year, I was a ghost. For a year, I coded, I watched, I cataloged. I built my case. Jade's tragic loss had made her a saint in her family's eyes, a grieving martyr. The death threats against me had faded, replaced by a quiet, smug certainty that I, the monster, was gone for good. They had moved on. But I hadn't. I had just been compiling. I had the stock ultrasound photo. I had the recycled sick pictures. I had the server logs from the high-end bar's public Wi-Fi, which placed her phone there on 3 different nights she was supposedly bedridden with morning sickness. I had the audio, captured by a high-gain microphone I'd paid a freelancer to plant, of her laughing with a friend about how dramatic her family was. I had everything. And now the system was fully mapped. The bugs were all documented. It was finally time to deploy the patch. You don't expose a lie like this to the believers. You expose it to their enemies. The family was a closed system, immune to my truth. So, I introduced an external variable. I sent my digital dossier, the Jade Protocol, to his father-in-law's primary business competitor with a simple, anonymous note. Thought you should see the kind of fraud the family last name is capable of. I didn't stop there. I sent it to the local gossipy society blogger I knew his mother-in-law read every day. And then I set the final trap. I sent a single encrypted email to Lila. It contained only one thing, a new high-definition photo of Jade, taken 2 nights ago. She was at a casino dressed in red, looking very much not pregnant, and kissing a man who was very much not me. The subject line was, "Everything has a price. Be at your father's house. Sunday. 7 p.m. If you want the rest of the truth, come alone." I knew they wouldn't just come alone. I knew she would panic and show her father. I knew he would take it as a threat, a blackmail attempt. Which is exactly what I wanted. I wanted them all there. I wanted them angry, unified, and self-righteous. I wanted them in the exact same emotional state they were in when they cast me out. I let them wait. I watched them pace, yelling into their phones. I let them stew for 30 minutes. And then, I didn't knock. I didn't ring the bell. I used the new key I'd had cut, after learning the locksmith service schedule for their high-security system, another bug in their code. I walked, unannounced, into the foyer. The explosion was immediate. "Get out!" the father roared, his face turning that familiar shade of purple. The brothers, Ben and Marcus, moved toward me, the same animalistic rage in their eyes. But I just stood there. I didn't flinch. I just said, my voice quiet, cutting through their noise, "Before you do that, Marcus, you might want to ask your sister why she was at the Bellagio on October 14th, charging $5,000 to your credit card, the one she lost?" Marcus stopped. He looked confused. "What?" Ben lunged and I just held up the tablet. On the screen was a crystal-clear image of the casino charge. And Ben, I said, you might want to ask her why she told you she needed $10,000 for emergency medical bills for the miscarriage, when the actual recipient was a bookie in Vegas named Sharky? Ben froze, his fist in midair. I had their attention, and then I began my presentation. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just presented the data. This, I said as the first image appeared on the 70-inch screen, is a photo Jade posted on June 10th. Morning sickness. And this is a photo from her Instagram 2018. Note the pajamas, the water glass, the exact metadata, a recycled image. I clicked. This is a post from June 28th, so sick. And this is a server log from Le Boudoir Bar, timestamp June 28th, 11:03 p.m. Her phone. Her account. 241 Cosmos. She wasn't sick. She was thirsty. Jade was shaking her head. This is fake. He's a hacker. He's making this up. The family was looking at her, but the first cracks were showing. The father's face was no longer angry, it was calculating. He was realizing not that I was innocent, but that his daughter was a liability. And this, I said, my voice dropping. This is peanut. I let the silence hang. A $10 royalty-free generic fetus. I could hear the mother whimper. Ben just sat down hard. Marcus was staring, his mouth open. Jade finally broke her act. Her face, her real face, emerged. It was a rictus of pure, unadulterated hate. You, she screamed, her voice no longer a fragile whisper, but a raw, guttural shriek. You bastard. You did this. You took my life. And her father, the patriarch, the man who had ruined me, finally spoke. His voice was a cold, dead whisper. Jade, he said, not looking at me but at her. Is it true? And that was all she needed. The final betrayal. Her own father, doubting her. She just imploded. She started laughing, a horrible, high-pitched, hysterical sound. Of course it's true, you stupid old man, she shrieked. It was all true. The bar. The money. The photo. And you all believed me. You believed me. Because you wanted to. Because you couldn't stand that he. She pointed at me, that he made her. She pointed at Lila, happy. I hate you. She lunged not at me but at Lila. I looked down at her. The woman I had adored. The woman who had, in 1.7 seconds, chosen a lie over a lifetime. I had dreamed of this moment. Of her begging. Of her broken. I thought I would feel triumph. I thought I would feel rage. I thought I would feel something. But I just felt tired. I felt the cold, clean emptiness of an algorithm that has finished its run. She was just a variable. A failed test. I know, I said. My voice was calm. I know you're sorry. I turned, unplugged my tablet and walked slowly back to the foyer. Ethan, wait, she screamed, scrambling after me. Wait, please. We can fix this. I love you. I love you. No, Lila, I said, my voice gentle, which was the cruelest part. You don't love me. You love the idea of me. The me you destroyed. And I paused. Am an engineer. And my analysis is complete. The system, your system, is fundamentally broken. It's unfixable. I opened the front door. The rain had stopped. The air was clean. Goodbye, Lila. There is a fundamental difference between revenge and justice. Justice is about restoring balance. Revenge is about proving a point. My point was proven. I had walked out of that house into the clean, rain-washed air, and I had not looked back. I got in my car, drove to the airport, and used the passport I'd had ready for 6 months, under my new legally acquired name. The name I had built my new highly profitable and completely legitimate cybersecurity firm under. You see, while I was Epsilon, the freelance fixer, I was also building my masterpiece, not a weapon but a shield. I had taken my intimate knowledge of how systems break, and I'd built a company that makes them unbreakable. The irony was, in their attempt to destroy me, they had given me the one thing I'd been missing in my old, comfortable life: focus. They had forged me from a simple architect into a master engineer. My new life is a clean-coded system. No bugs. No backdoors. No sentimental attachments that can be exploited. My revenge wasn't just that one night in the dining room. That was just the deployment. The real revenge is this. It's the life I built from the ashes. It's the fact that I sleep soundly for 8 hours every night. It's the fact that my net worth is now more than his father's, and I earned it without stepping on a single person who didn't deserve it. I didn't need to vanish into the woods and become a handyman. That's a victim's retreat. I advanced. I evolved. I took the logic that they had used against me and I simply perfected it. The old system, of course, completely corrupted itself. The patch I deployed, it worked. The father's business rival, the one I had leaked the first dossier to, used the moral turpitude angle to pull a hostile takeover, just as I had predicted. The father's company, the one he had used to destroy my career, was shattered. He lost everything. The family name was mud. The brothers, Ben and Marcus, had, in a moment of rage, actually assaulted Jade after her confession. She'd had them arrested. A beautiful, circular, self-consuming system of destruction. The mother had a nervous breakdown. The entire house of cards had fallen, just as the data suggested it would. And Lila? What about Lila? I never heard from her again. But I didn't have to. I know exactly what happened to her. She is a woman without a system. Her family, the one she chose over me, is a toxic wasteland. Her love, the man she betrayed, is a ghost. She is a bug in a deleted program. She is an error message that no one is left to read. Me, I'm an engineer. I don't deal in emotions. I deal in solutions. And the problem, the entire problem, is finally solved.